Better late than never. Talking NASCAR on Prime Sports Network. A healthy Greg DePalma, along with a mildly healthy Eric Smith.
Yeah. We'll say mildly for right now. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So
wasn't that case 2 days ago, so
yeah,
better. Yeah.
Things not good for Eric health wise, which is why we're recording the show on Thursday. But so far so good for today. And then Eric is heading to the track tomorrow for practice and qualifying, right, for Indy?
Yep, both. Yep, 2 practices and a qualifying. Yep.
That's for the road course race on Saturday. So hopefully, if everything goes well, health-wise, we'll be talking to Eric again with his report live from the track tomorrow. So look forward to that for you IndyCar fans. We've only got about a half hour here today, so let's get right to it. Let's talk a little bit about what happened just quickly last week, because it was a pretty entertaining race. There were hell of a lot of changes, a lot of leaders. That's always nice. And then we had maybe the best ending that we've had all season as well. And it was certainly nice to come ahead of that one too. With Denny Hamlin pulling it out. And I don't, they could say I know there was a little criticism. I don't know specifically. I remember who it was, but I mean, come on. Denny did exactly what Denny needed to do. There's no criticizing Denny for that move.
Yeah, I mean, he didn't wreck him per se, because Larson only went from first to second.
Correct.
And I get what he was trying to. I mean, that's the only bad thing about this car with dirty air, because let's be honest, we saw it coming. Hamlin had a faster race.
Oh, if he would have got the lead, he probably would have took off.
Yeah, and that's the only thing is it's the dirty air of the car. That's why I'm okay with what he did. Now, if Hamlin didn't chase him down and he got lucky catching him, and then he did that, I'm like, yeah, the wrong guy won. But I feel like at that portion of the race, he had a faster race car. He couldn't get by. I mean, that's the dirty air with this car. But then he moved his side drafted, and I mean, you can see Larson wasn't too upset about it. And I think it would have roles reversed. Anybody probably would have done that.
Well, Larson would have, that's for sure.
Yeah, and it's like I said, if he wrecked him and Larson 20th because he spun and whatever, it's a different story. But he was still second, and Hamlin needed a win. He did what he had to do, and again, that creates. It's not a vanilla ending that NASCAR's had. It was something where they got to fight it out, and then we had a fight on pit road between 2 other drivers afterwards. So
yes, we did.
It was a good day for NASCAR. It was a very good day for them.
Yeah, good for Noah Gragson, like that, definitely.
Yep.
And I guess, somebody had to. It is a little weak that it had to be Gragson to be the one to go. I mean, come on, guys. Show some, what? I mean, what are you doing? This guy's basically a rookie, and you're letting him do the dirty work?
And he said it all right, because he's right. And this is the one thing we've been calling out drivers for a while. They get mad at another driver, but they don't do anything about it. He at least did something about it. He said, I hear a bunch of talk, and they're not going to do something about it. I'll do something. So he did, and I applaud him for doing it. But it also goes to show the kind of whininess behind it is because Chastain admitted that he squeezed him a little bit, but he still gave him a lane, and he did. If you watch the replay, there was room. It just Gragson had his foot in it too much and scraped the wall, and he blamed Chastain for it. And it's like, look, he didn't touch you, he didn't wreck you, but you're the one that kind of lost control of your car in a position maybe you shouldn't have been in to begin with. But hey, that's racing, and he took it out on Chastain. And Chastain, as I wrote after that race, that I feel like he sent a message to the garage with that vicious right hook he had there. Kind of like, hey, you want to go confront the guy. He's not as weak as he probably seemed to be at that point. So I think Chastain sent a message. He wasn't going to be bullied either. And beware going to grab him. So he can hit too. But I think it was good for NASCAR. NASCAR needs that villain.
Yep.
Chastain will gladly play that role. You can tell he's not going to change the way he races. And no matter what you say, it's not like he's a back marker doing this. The guy's leading the points for crying out loud right now. And he's creating that villain role. So
all good.
They need it. Now, I guess the next one we need is maybe him versus Chase Elliott. Maybe that will spark something, the NASCAR's
Yes.
most popular driver versus the
There you
villain,
go.
and there we go. There off we go with something.
Yeah.
This is what NASCAR's needed, and it's also two guys that could be running up front. So this is I thought it was big that Formula One's ratings went down 20% in the last week. So NASCAR's went up, and it went up. Formula One's went down. You get a fight, you get a close finish, you get the most lead changes for a 400-mile race on an intermediate track. Great weekend all around for NASCAR. They delivered, I'd say.
Yeah, we'll hope and see if they can keep that momentum going. Unfortunately, when you go to Darlington, it could be boring on Sunday.
Yep.
So hopefully something else will happen to shake things up. But yeah, overall everything worked out, and like you said, Hamlin got the schneid off his back. So before we take a look at this week's race, though, I want to take a look, because we did have several viewer comments. Keep them coming. The comments, love them. The interaction. Don't forget, press that like button. That's always important. As I said before, we know that we have enough viewers now, so anytime you watch the video, just hit the like button. Almost like automatic. That helps us out tremendously, because the more that traffic and the likes that we can get, the better off we can do as an overall channel and as a show. Alan Batt, once again, great content as always. So appreciate that, Alan.
Thank you. Yep.
Now, Rogue Bodie, he got into it because he was talking about what we talked about last week regarding Hendrick. And who's gonna put their foot down? Is it gonna be some discipline with these guys? So Rogue Bodie, good points all the way around, especially the content on drivers racing to far outside the series. Imagine Curry telling Golden State that he's gonna enter a few MMA matches or hockey games to maintain his abilities. Not gonna happen. Management would have a stroke. If you're at the Cup level and competitive, you don't need to go risking it all for a snowball derby or some of these other risky and lower tier races they're involved in. So that's
100%. Yep. Yeah, because that's a good analogy. Yeah, if Curry went and did that just to stay sharp. Pretty sure what's his name, Bob. His last name out there in Golden State, Bob Myers. I'm sure he would probably put a quick note of that one pretty quickly. That wouldn't happen.
Ken Gunter, thanks for the driver info. That's what I'm here for. And then another comment, and this is interesting because it's both Ken and Paul Moss had the same kind of idea, and this is your department. So I'm a DFS guy. What would be great is after practice and qualifying to put a short video afterwards to drivers to win, I guess, place value or PD. What's PD? Or did he mean place to win place?
Probably
picks
probably
after practice qualifying when it really counts. Early stuff is more speculation, in my opinion. Thanks for responding. I responded to him, but and Paul Moss said I would like to see a prediction. Which, by the way, we do try to get consistent with that, where I ask Eric his top 3 picks every week. Sometimes I forget. 3 cars for the top 5 after the practice and qualifying. After the lineup set, I watch y'all every week. Thank you. So appreciate that, Paul and Ken. Now, a couple quick things. Look, the fact is that after practice and qualifying, this is one of those things that, matter of fact, I just talked about with the likes. And the more this channel grows, the easier it will be for people like Eric, who already has a full-time day job, and then he's doing his website and so forth, to add some extra to the show, including, and we've talked about this, is being able to take the camera and say a couple of things and email me the file and have me post it. It's a little work. So these are the little things that we'd like to get to, but it takes time. And that's why we always figured, too, if we're going to do the show either early in the week or after practice and qualifying, we just figure for 2 main reasons it's better to do it early in the week. First of all, besides practice and qualifying, we're giving you everything else. Second of all, we're giving you it early in the week, and not a lot of other channels do that. And also, if we do post a show only after practice and qualifying, then our channel numbers aren't going to be the same. So there's a whole bunch of reasons why a second show after practice and qualifying or another video after that. Absolutely, that's something that's on the table. but that's just all part of the channel growing.
Yeah, and it might be, even getting going on that, it might be easy for me to tweet out a few after, because a lot of times too, if I'm covering another race, I'm not probably, like this weekend I'll be at Indy, so I'm not going to even have a lot of chance to look down until the end of the night to see what's going on in the NASCAR world in Darlington. So I might miss some of that. And by the time we would, like this weekend, by the time we get a chance to do a video on Saturday, it'd probably 10 o'clock at night by the time I'm even done. And it probably doesn't help you very much with the race on Sunday. Now, granted, if I'm covering NASCAR that week, and I typically will put out a post once that's all done, my prediction, top 5 drivers,
yes, that's true,
type thing. But on a weekly consistent basis, yeah, as I said, sometimes that costs a little extra revenue to entice me to maybe keep my focus over here instead of over here. But yeah,
hey, you know what? Maybe too. The first thing is maybe just whenever that time comes, we even start with just posting a video, maybe directly on your own Twitter page.
Yeah, it'd be short.
It'd be a lot easier than sending it to me and having to post it, and then this way, and you already should have Eric's Twitter account, and so that's something that we'll definitely work on. So
yeah, and I could even put it in the a tweet if it's something you don't even want to watch a video for. Like here's the update. Because the other thing too is you gotta wait for NASCAR or these betting sites to update the odds. Sometimes they take them off usually, so then you're at the mercy of
they do.
When are they going to put them up?
And they wait until the morning of the race. Yes.
So sometimes it's a delay for that, but it also doesn't change. Or I could still give without the odds. Here's who I think, because at the end of the day, that's who you want. If you think they're going to finish there, no matter the odds, you might as well put it out there so you at least can see who I think after that, and then you can bet accordingly as the odds come out. I don't mind doing that either. So we'll bob and weave. We'll figure it out. And give you what you need.
All right. Let's get to it. So, let's run through this as quick as we can. Darlington, I found this interesting. The last 21 races, 16 of those 21, the winner started outside the top 5. So we just talked about qualifying and practice. Sometimes it matters, sometimes it doesn't. This is the perfect example where it really doesn't matter. So
no, and this is a track where we talked kind of like a Richmond, when I said Homestead. It's short run speed means nothing. Qualifying is 1-2 laps. Basically, you got to get going and then take the green, then you come around and take the checkered. That's basically one hard lap that you're doing. The race is, 293, I think, this weekend. So it's a longer, when the tires are going to fall off. I mean, there's as big of a 3-4 second difference, which is like 12 to 15 miles an hour by time starting your run and maybe the middle of the run. It's a huge difference. So that's why qualifying doesn't mean a whole lot, because some of the guys that qualify, since it's an impound race, they might qualify, well, I'm going to go for track position. I'm going to go on short run pace. So they might start off good, where other guys might say, hey, you know what? It's a long race. I'm going to go ahead and qualify my race setup because I know we're probably good on fall off compared to the guys in front of me that might fall off quicker. So that's the kind of games you play. And usually the guys starting outside the top 10, usually they might be slower on short run bursts, but they're good on long run. And that's why you see trends like that.
Yeah, it's not as, and we talked about this before, it was a lot more important a few years ago than it is now. It's relevant, but not as. And also Chevy, when Eric Jones won the race, the last race last year, he was the first Chevy driver to win at Darlington since 2014. Now that's important because we do only care about kind of the last 2 races more than anything. And so that kind of brings Chevy back into the fold as far as, all right, well, they're having a great year. Well, I'm not going to look at them differently just because they've had just one winner since 2014.
Yeah, and the trend I found too, I was looking at this season, just lap sleds, just in general, run up front, Ford, they've led 50.8% of all their laps this year were accounted for on the 3 super speedways. So Daytona, Talladega, Atlanta. They led 122 laps in Daytona, 221 in Atlanta, and 88 more in Talladega. You take out the 296 laps led in Martinsville, which is Martinsville, nothing really comparable to this. They've led a combined 121 laps everywhere else. That tells you they're not really leading a lot of laps on kind of intermediate tracks like this package is going to be.
Okay.
They haven't won a lot in Darlington lately. Toyota's been the one. They led 164 laps on these 2 tracks. Chevrolet, 351 laps as far as like intermediate, mile and a half tracks, Kansas, Vegas, that kind of stuff. Then you look at the finishing order. Ford had one guy in the top 10 last weekend. So I think this is more of a Toyota versus Chevy race. Granted, a Ford and a Logano won this race last year. You look at how everything's progressed since that point. I think it's more of a Toyota Chevrolet battle this weekend.
Now, did you notice anything at all different last year with the new cars, with the track? Because the track, again, historically, pretty much a boring racetrack. Not a whole lot goes on. Pit strategy, very important, especially with the high line, which is aggravating. So this is one of those things where if people have, and we talked about this a month or so ago, if you're having a debate on whether or not they should go back to single file restarts, you don't need to worry about that at Darlington, because if you start on the bottom, you're in trouble.
You are. Yeah, it's the top lane is the fast lane around here. Now, Harvick runs a little bit different line. He gets kind of closer to the dotted line. Granted, it's not low, but it's kind of that lower lane of the top lane. You'll know what I'm talking about through the dotted line in Darlington. But most other guys will run that top lane. That's the fast way around this track. And it's gonna be tire fall off as always. Nothing really changes. I thought last year looked a lot like years past because it was all about tire fall off, maintaining that pit strategy, make sure you don't screw up in the pits. It just looked the same both races. So,
and by the way, that's why I wanted to take a look at the pit. And I sent you that email because I was taking a look. I found a website that seemed to do a pretty good job putting stats together for pit road success or lack thereof. I don't know if you had an opportunity to look at it, but
I haven't yet.
It looked like a pretty good site. It looked like they knew what they were talking about. And then I looked at another one that was more like a modern, like a top site that just talked about, this is what these cars have done this season on these types of tracks, something like that, or something else I saw similar type drivers. So I was like, all right, maybe they are saying the right things because this other big site seems to be using the same drivers. I thought it was interesting. The driver at the top of the list is Eric Jones. Apparently, according to this site, they got the best pit crew so far this season. So the reason I wanted to look at that is, again, because the pit crew is going to be important this week.
Very much so.
And
very.
Yeah. So, all right. So quickly, let's get into that. And we only had one similar driver that we all picked. One. He would be considered a top contender.
Larson?
No. I'm the only one that did not take Larson.
Truex?
No, I'm the only one who did not take Truex. I went through the strategy again of eliminating those first several drivers.
First several? So that tells me then Chastain?
You're the only one who didn't take him.
I'm trying to think of this guy's that next little it's got to be that next little group right there then. Gosh, who was the other one? I'm trying to think of who else is in that little bit of is it Bell?
No. Wow. No, you're getting like everybody but.
I get all around him.
There's only two left.
Hamlin. That's what I said. Reddick?
Oh, you missed it. It's the only one left now.
Did I say Hamlin?
No, but I don't have him. No, he was all the way at. Remember, I didn't take.
Byron.
Actually, CJ didn't even take Hamlin.
Is it Byron?
Yes.
Okay. I don't know why I skipped over him. I got my page here, and I got Hamlin, Byron, Bell, right? And I just missed the middle one. But yeah, Byron.
Yeah. So William Byron, that's the one. And yeah, because you look at Larson and Hamlin, they're both 5-1. Hamlin would have to come back and win again. That's very difficult to do. He was second last year out of 2 races, which is nice. Led 42 laps in the other, which is nice. 4 wins. That's all nice. I can understand it, but 5-1's a short number. Same thing for Larson because he's too unpredictable this season. In his last 6 races, he's been either first or second or in the 30s. And this year, he's got 5 top 5s with 5 finishes of 29th or worse. I mean, I can't take a driver that you could just flip a coin and go, okay, is he going to be in the 30s this week or is he going to be contending for a win? I'm not taking that guy at 5-1. I should just put it that way.
He was difficult because I was the same one. I'm like, man, he's either really good or really bad. And he's got 5 races. So he's had no issues. And he's got 2 wins, 2 runner-ups, and a 4th in those races. And I also went a little bit deeper. Those are, if you look at races that he's done well on, they're playoff tracks this year. And this is a playoff track. And in the 4 races on playoff tracks this season, he's got an average finish of 2.25.
Okay.
So I'm like, all right, he seems to rise to the occasion under playoff tracks.
We'll have to keep that in locked away after this week's race.
Yep, and so I looked at what he did. Now, last year he blew an engine with 36, 12th in the Southern 500. I think something happened to him then too. But prior to that, he had 3 straight runner-ups and 2 third-place finishes in a 3-race span. He's led a lot of laps there, and the only thing he's missing is a win. I thought 5-1 was steep, but it's like I need to get a win back, so like I'm just gonna have to take him, and I'm just gonna roll the playoff track.
I would actually take Larson over Hamlin myself if I was choosing between the two.
Yeah, and Hamlin, the odds of winning. The thing with him that struck me that was hard with him was winning 2 in a row. Hard to do in NASCAR these days. And he was complaining about his pit crew just a week ago. And he just won this race. Granted, it wasn't because of his pit crew. We're talking about a lot of pit stops on Sunday. And it's just a lot of opportunities for them to mess it up on pit road. So that 5-1 was tough with that.
That's true.
And you look at 9 top 10s in his last 12 there, 8 of them in the top 5. He's been so good there overall. I just do you take him? Do you not? 3 top 5s in the last 4 weeks. He's starting to figure it out. Maybe his pit crew will get better. So it was hard to separate those two because they each have had their issues this year. That's what makes it so difficult this year compared to a few years ago. Was every one of them you have to list the pros and cons box. For a few years ago, it was just a bunch of pros. There wasn't many cons. Now you're just kind of picking your poison with them. It's just who do you want to think is going to not have the bad week this week when they're all capable of having it.
Yep. Truex is next at 7-1, and Reddick at 8-1. 8-1. I did play Reddick, not Truex. Truex last year did lead laps, 28 and 48, but had a wreck and a water pump issue. Before that, he did lead 248 laps, dominated into the 2021 win, one of his 2, which is really nice. But again, this is almost like me. I'm 2 out of 3 races, and Reddick, meanwhile, it hasn't won in a while. I am concerned with as bad as his pit crew has apparently been this year. That does concern me. But 2nd and 3rd last year, I know it was on a different car, but it is what it is. And he also did pretty well in the Xfinity Series on this track. So that's why I went with Reddick over Truex.
Yeah, they're both, I feel like, solid plays, too, because Truex, he's got 4 top 8 finishes in the last 5 weeks. He hasn't won in the previous 7. You can always tell they're turning around, too. In Toyota last year, even in the spring race that Logano won, Toyota, bar none, was the better manufacturer. At one point, I think they had the entire top 5. And then towards late in the race, I think 5 or 6 of the Toyota cars were in the top 8. And remember, they all pretty much wrecked off turn 2 on a restart, which is what caught Truex out. That's why his finish was indicative of how strong of a car he had. That's why I also put a lot of stock in Reddick this week because, as you said, 2nd and 3rd last year, that wasn't with this Toyota car. Now you're giving him a Toyota car. We know what Reddick can do at Homestead, one of his best tracks. That's another reason I should have said with Larson. Right? He dominated Homestead last year.
Yes.
And this track is just like that. Very similar. So I feel like Reddick's the biggest bargain out of all those guys you just mentioned because you're getting better odds. And this track to him is just like Larson at Homestead. I just feel like it's so similar and you're getting 3 points lower for him. So this could be his race to lose this weekend, giving him Toyota power.
Yeah, just taking a look there, last year, Larson won last year, as you mentioned, but Chastain was 2nd, which I'm happy about since I have him. And I also have Dillon, and he finished 4th at Homestead last year, so I guess I'm happy about that as well. All right, then you have Kyle at 9-1. Nobody took Kyle. He has a pretty good history here, but only 1 win. And last 3 races, crash, engine. That's all bad luck at 9-1. And then Byron also at 9-1, as we mentioned. We all have him, so I'm going big time on Byron. I put 30 down on him. The pit crew's also been very good this year. He's coming on again. He's trending in the right direction. He led 24 and 50 laps in the races last year. So I think it's a good combination that he seems to be a lot better now at Darlington with the new car, and he is trending back in the right direction.
Yeah, Byron's the play out of those two. In each of the last 4 weeks, he's improved the season. 23rd to 7th, 7th to 4th, 4th to 3rd. Seems like that's kind of looks for a win. He should have won last year. Remember, Logano pushed him out of the way on the last lap or second to last lap. Also on playoff tracks this year, again, same with Larson. Byron's finish is 7th. He's got 2 wins and a 3rd place finish in those races. Okay. So he's performing on tracks like that. Kyle, I don't understand how he's been 16-1 and 18-1 the last couple of weeks and drop him to 9-1.
Yeah, I know.
And you look at the season, I mean, the only exception, he's finished 14th or worse in 5 of the last 6 weeks, including 4 of the last 5 being 21st or worse. The only exception is his Talladega win, but he led 3 laps that day. He's finished 14th or worse in 5 of the last 6, 4 of the last 5 being 21st or worse overall. It's like, how does that go to a driver that goes from 16-1 to 9-1? Like, I'm going to fade him on that, even though he has the car that I just said that Reddick finished the top 3 in. Kyle just doesn't seem like a top 3 car.
At 9-1, that's the problem.
9-1, no. 16-1, I would have taken him. 9-1, not a shot.
Bell 10-1, Chastain 11-1. So again, you took Bell. CJ and I went with Chastain. You got the points leader, as you mentioned. Again, the pit crew's done well. If you take a look at his last several races there, now his 3rd place finish in September of 21, I believe, I didn't do the research, but it had to be the best race of his career prior to the switch to the new cars, because he never had that type of results before that. So that's a good sign. Last year, crashed in this race, led 26 laps. And he also had a runner-up in one of the Xfinity Series races, leading over 100 laps there in 7 races. So he had some success there as well. And he's doing pretty good. 2nd and 5th in his last 2 races. So I felt Chastain was a good way to go. You went with Bell, though. So why'd you go with Bell?
Well, I feel, again, the Toyota power. I just feel like Toyota's right now probably the power to beat this weekend. Started 3rd and 2nd, finished 6th and 5th last year. So he started up front, finished up front. You just feel like he's about to break back out again. He just seems like his speed's getting there. He's got a little bit of bad luck, but it happens to everybody, it seems like. I just felt all in on Toyota. That's why I kept going to Toyota guys. Ross, he's a good play. Again, I just didn't have enough money left to get him because of everybody else up front. The only thing that scared me is he's been running well. He just doesn't look like he has race winning speed yet. That's the only thing. I feel like he's a solid top 5, but does he have what it takes to break that bubble and get in the top 2? Hendrick should be good here. Larson and Byron. Their playoff track trends seem to kind of fall into it. The 4 Gibbs cars I expect good at it. So there's 6 cars right there. Can he break that bubble? That's the only thing. And without enough money to wager his way, that's why I faded him. I still think he's a strong play, but I just didn't have enough money left to get him when Bell seemed to be the safer bet. Plus, he was plus 3,000 last year for Bell. So his odds really went down. So they see something out of him.
12-1, we have Elliott and Harvick. And CJ put money on both. I just put money on Harvick. You passed on both of them. The only reason I was thinking about taking Elliott was I'm getting 12-1 with Chase Elliott. So that's unusual. Especially the fact that he's like, the 8th best driver odds-wise. That's very unusual. Yeah. And he was 5th in this race last year. He had a win in the Xfinity Series back in 2014, even though he hasn't won yet in the Cup Series. But, look, he's 12-1 for a reason. He hasn't, as we said last week, it's just not happening yet. Harvick, meanwhile, I went with Harvick. 4th in this race last year, had an exhaust issue after that in the 2nd race, and that broke a race streak of 13 straight in the top 10. And that's the reason why I went with Harvick. He's dominated this track before with 13 top 5s and 3 wins. And I'm just kind of feeling, Martin Truex won, Denny Hamlin won. Maybe this is Kevin Harvick's week.
This is a veteran type track. I do like Harvick better than Elliott. Chase, I thought his odds are pretty good for a Chase Elliott, but if you look, he's 0 for 12 at Darlington. He's never won at Homestead. He's never won at Fontana. He's not good on. He's never won at Atlanta before their repave. He won. It took a repave and reconfiguration. So on aged tracks, he doesn't win at. And so I thought, that and 4 of his last 6 finishes, he's seen him finish 20th or worse. He still isn't getting top 5 since he's been back. You still can kind of notice that. So I'm like, 12 to 1 is probably where he should be, but I'll fade on him. Harvick is interesting because if you look at, he's a night and day difference between driving for RCR and SHR there. And RCR, 17 starts at Darlington, 63 total laps led. Since he joined Stuart Haas, 13 starts, 750 laps led. So this is his track. You feel like a veteran should do well there. The only thing that held me back from him, he has 1 top 5 finish in the last 8 weeks, and he's never finished better than 5th all season. Granted, I think the next gen's proven anything can happen, but that scared me a little bit it's like, well, we're not only asking him to finish better than 5th, we're asking him to get 4 spots better than 5th. When we talk about how good the Toyota guys are, the Hendrick guys should be outside of Chase Elliott. So I felt, he's a great play if you can get him for a top 5 finish, a top 10 even on some books, but an outright win, I just kind of faded him for that reason.
All right. Next up, we have Logano at 14 to 1 and his teammate Blaney at 22 to 1. Logano, look, I took Logano same way I was thinking of Elliott just because of the odds, and I just went with Logano at 14 to 1 because I said, well, I'm getting 14 to 1 on the defending champ of the race, who led 107 laps from the pole. He was 4th in the second race with 64 laps from the pole. So, that's a nice combination here last year, as good as, probably better than any driver last year. And the 171 laps he led last year, keep that in mind because he led 122 laps in his first 16 races with the other car. So the new car and Joey Logano at Darlington really seemed to work, and I'm getting 14 to 1. So I had to go with Logano. And Blaney, this is just one of those tracks that you pass on him at. I still think he'll probably do better than people think because that's kind of what he's done. What scared me away from just going with him was that 16th at Kansas. As we said before, he seems to be a streaky driver. And I don't want that to be the start of like 2 or 3 races in a row outside the top 10.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. I feel like what his odds were this week. I just wasn't going to take Blaney with 1 top 10 and 12 tries. 17th to 13th last year, and as you said, wasn't in the top 15 last week.
And it's strange, too, because he actually did well in the Xfinity Series at this track. But
yeah, just it doesn't suit him. And Penske always had better cars than everybody in that series, too, so when they were out there running. So it was hard to translate that to Cup when everybody's good. And Logano, is the factor what I said earlier about the Fords. They just seem to be down in power as far as I don't know if it's horsepower, I don't know if it's handling or what, but on higher speed tracks, not of drafting tracks, just an outright pace, they just don't seem to have it. Now, granted, Logano would be the top guy. He was a top 4 finisher last week in Kansas. So, like you said, he had good stats there. I went more all in the Toyota camp still rather than faded some of those Fords, but he's not a bad play for his odds where he's at.
All right. And then you have Wallace at 28 to 1, Suarez at 45 to 1. Wallace was 4th last week, 2nd top 10 in his last 4, 9th in one of the races last year. So that's interesting. Suarez still not getting a good feel for him. So yeah, I just, if I was going to take one of the 2, I would take Wallace.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Suarez just 5 of his last 7 races, we've seen him finish 18th or worse. 8 of his last 9, that's at Darlington. 8 of his last 9 of the season, he's finished 15th or worse. So he's not doing enough for me to worth taking him even at his odds. Bubba, yeah, it's 9th last year, Southern 500, top 10 last week, Toyota Power. The only factor is he has 1 top 10 in his career at Darlington. That's what kind of scared me away from him a little bit. Do I think he's going to go out and win? Darlington, I just don't see it. If you could get him for a top 10 play, to bet him that way, that's probably your better look than an outright win for him.
All right. And then as far as the rest of the long shots, I went with Keselowski at 50 to 1, Briscoe and Dillon at 100 to 1. I just put $4 combined on those 3 drivers. CJ went with Keselowski. You put a few bucks on him. You put a couple of bucks each on Jones and Buescher. With Keselowski, he was 7th his last time out there. And, he's a veteran driver, and you do wonder whether or not he's going to get a win this year. So at 50-1, this is not a bad time to maybe go with him there. And then with Briscoe and Dillon, for Briscoe, it was really more of the fact that sort of like Blaney, I'm kind of surprised he hasn't worked yet for the Cup Series because he was excellent in the Xfinity Series at this racetrack, Chase Briscoe. So I am getting 100-1 on him. And Austin Dillon, runner-up in 2020, coming off a 10th place finish last week, 9th in this race last year, has 5 career top 10s, did well in the Xfinity Series, and just mentioned too, he finished 4th at Homestead, so that's not a bad that's not a bad deal as well. And Jones and Buescher were 2 drivers I was also considering for long shots, but you took them, so that's good.
Yep, Jones, victory stat. Plus, he won the Southern 500, and it wasn't necessarily Kyle, Busch, and Truex had issues while they were leading and handed the lead to Jones, but he held them off, and he had to be there. He was 3rd, so he capitalized on theirs. It wasn't like he was 20th and found his way to the lead. He was 3rd. This is arguably one of his best tracks. He's got 7 top 8 finishes in 10 tries, and you're getting them for good odds. So why not go his direction? I agree with Austin Dillon. As you said, he's good on age tracks. So is Buescher. Atlanta, he was good at. Fontana, he's been good at. He was 9th in both races in 2021. Granted, last year didn't have as good of luck, but RFK Racing was still trying to find their footing. They're much better at this time around. I say him and Keselowski, you might as well snag them both. Because I could see them potentially winning. As far as the Ford camp, that's probably your top 4 team because you're getting better odds than you are with the Penske's. So I like them. Couple longer shots. Michael McDowell, 7th and 6th last year on this track. So he's pair of top 7. Justin Haley, 3rd in this race last year. So if you want to go a longer shot package, look their way. Stenhouse was 8th last year, but however, that's his only top 10 and 14 Darlington starts. I just don't know if he's going to win Daytona and Darlington in the same year. But if you want to go a longer shot package, there's some good guys out there that could potentially steal a win this weekend.
And a lot of those long shots really do need a good week, especially you look at it, Dillon, if he's going to have anything going on for him this season, he needs to have a good week. Haley only has a couple of top 10s. Jones only has a couple of top 10s, and then you mentioned McDowell, just 1 top 10. Even Corey LaJoie, the good season he's had, only has 1 top 10. Austin Cindric, 2 top 10s. There's a lot of drivers that have been disappointing. AJ hasn't had a top 10 since the 500. Ryan Preece does not have a top 10. It just goes on and on. I have been, though, we spoke about Gregson's battle on Sunday. The last couple of races, even though he hasn't finished well, he has shown. So something's starting to maybe percolate there for Noah Gragson, but the results are still not there. So,
yeah, that's something too. You got to look at are they really going to jump out and they've been that way all season? Are they just going to magically win? I just find it hard that you're going to go from that to victory lane, especially when all these guys we talked about have been pretty strong there. It's like not only that, you have to beat those guys. That's the other. Yes. You've got to actually beat them. That's what's hard to do.
It's not Daytona or Talladega. So.
Nope.
All right, so that's going to wrap it up. Don't forget to check out the website there, of course, racereviewonline.net. That's where you can check out all of our picks, the exact amount that we put for each pick. Same thing for the fantasy. That's already up there. For the futures, that's already up there. We'll talk more about that stuff when we have more time next week. Again, tomorrow, Eric will have his IndyCar report live from the racetrack. And then next week, we have, is that the All-Star race next week?
That's the All-Star race. Yep, Northwest.
All right. And then in 2 weeks, the big Sunday. And by the way, CJ is going to try to make that week, the week of the Coke 600. So it's, work for CJ, which is the reason why he's cut down to a couple of shows a year. But we talked about it. He's going to try to make it. So we'll see if we can get him on in a couple of weeks. Anyway, thanks for bucking the health issues there, Eric. Appreciate it.
The good old stomach bug,
Yes.
but hopefully it's cleared and smooth sailing away.
Yes, and we'll talk to you hopefully in better form on this show next week, but I'll talk to you tomorrow.
Yep, sounds good.